Hi, Donald here with Floating Feathers Kayak Fly Fishing School with another tips and tricks. This tips and tricks is on the top 10 safety rules for kayak fishing. Top 10. Number 1, don't drink, don't do drugs. All right? Very simple, very easy to follow. Don't drink when you're on the water fishing and kayaking. Don't do drugs when you're on the kayak and fishing. They just do not mix. Number 2, wear a PFD, personal flotation device, life jacket, life vest, whatever you want to call it. Wear it. Make sure it fits correctly and make sure you are wearing it. Okay. Number 3, file a float plan. Now there's several ways to file a float plan. I have another video. If you look at my video series, you'll find one on how to file a float plan or some tips on how to file a float plan. There are several ways to do that. You can do it with a Coast Guard app. You can file it with friends. You can file it with a marina, things like that. So file a float plan. Number 4, carry a radio or a phone that is properly charged, and you can get signal. If you're in the oceans or anywhere offshore, you're going to have a UHF, VHF radio. Any type of communication. If you have somebody else with you, a two-way radio, things like that. So radio or phone. Excuse me. Number 5, learn to self-rescue. Extremely important to save yourself. Deep water reentry, self-rescue. Number 5 is learn how to self-rescue. Number 6, check the weather conditions continually before you launch. Not only just the day before or the morning of or on your way to launch. When you get to the launch, before you put your kayak in the water, double check those weather conditions. We all know weather can change and storms can come up in a heartbeat. So check those weather conditions before you launch. Check them for, if you're going to be out there for 3 or 4 hours, check it for the next 3 or 4 hours. And when you're on the water, check the weather conditions. Things can change. You may need to get to shelter real fast. Check your weather conditions continuously while you're kayak fishing. Number 7, have the proper safety gear, right? You need a whistle, you need a light, you need a PFD, you need a small knife, right? You definitely need a knife on you, and things like that. You can see my other stuff on safety equipment for kayak fishing. Make sure you have the proper safety gear. And it also depends on what waters you're fishing. You may need certain safety gear for certain conditions other than others. Number 8, know your limits and limitations. Now, I've done a video on this in the past. You can go back and watch that. But it's very, very important to not let somebody else dictate to you what you should feel you can do and cannot do. Number 9, know your kayak's limitations, right? Number 8 is know your limitations. Number 9 is know the limitations of your kayak. Not all kayaks are able to do everything that some other kayaks do. It's kind of like a bicycle. You can ride a 10-speed bike on the road extremely fine, but if you take it on a mountain trail, it's not going to work too well. And a mountain bike works great on the mountains, but it doesn't tend to do so well on highway because of the big fat tires, just like kayaks. There are certain kayaks made for certain water situations and certain kayaks made for other water situations. So no limitations of your kayak. Know how long, or that number 10 is know how long it takes you to paddle a certain distance, okay? And what I mean by that is a semi or intermediate skilled kayaker can paddle at about 3.5 miles per hour. And that's taking proper paddling class, that somebody's been to proper paddling schools or has been paddling for a number of years. And what I mean by intermediate, I don't mean an expert that can, is a kayak racer or something like that. I mean somebody that actually has taken paddling classes, uses proper paddling techniques, knows his or her kayak extremely well and paddles it very efficiently, can paddle at only about 3.5 miles per hour. Which means if you're not an experienced kayaker or an intermediate kayaker, you haven't taken a paddling class, you don't know how the proper paddling techniques, things like that. And by the way, that 3.5 miles per hour is in calm water with no wind, okay? So if any of those conditions increase, wind increases or water, you've got to go against current, you've got to go against tide or anything like that, that 3.5 miles per hour is going to decrease or increase. Now, if you've got the wind against your back, it may increase, right? It may decrease to 3 miles or increase to 4 miles per hour. But average 3.5 miles per hour for an intermediate skilled kayaker. For a novice or beginner kayaker that has never taken a paddling class, you're looking at a maximum speed of about 2 miles per hour. That's a little bit slower. It's not quite half, but it's a little over half. So what does that mean? That means the same thing for the experienced paddler. However, the experienced intermediate paddler has got some things going for him or her because of that experience. He or she knows how to paddle in adverse conditions. So even though that the wind against your front may have some adverse conditions on every paddler, if you're a novice paddler, it's going to affect you even more. And as we load up all of our fishing kayaks, we have a lot of stuff on this. We have a bigger profile, and the wind is going to push us even more and more than it will for somebody that has less equipment on their kayak. So kind of put it all together. If you're in a 12-foot long, 30-inch wide kayak on calm waters with no wind, and you're in an intermediate paddler, your maximum speed is about 3.5 miles per hour. If you're a novice paddler and never taken a paddling class, your average speed is going to be about 2 miles per hour. That's it. That's pretty much it all in a nutshell. So what does all that mean? It means you have to know how far away your safe place is going to be. Now, whether that be a launch area, was the same area you're going to return to, or your takeout area, your portage area, any type of safe place that you have to find. It may just be an emergency safe place because of weather, but you have to know how far that is, because you're going to have to know how long it's going to take you to paddle there, right? So if you're 2 miles from the launch or from your takeout point and you can paddle 2 miles per hour, an hour of paddling continuously is about what you're going to have to do to get there. Now, most people don't paddle for a full hour. They'll stop, they'll fish, they'll take a break, they'll get a drink of water, they'll rest their arms, their legs, or whatever they're going to do, right? So you may actually find yourself that 2 miles an hour is probably the max more than the average, because as anglers, we want to stop if we can. However, an emergency situation, don't stop and fish. Fish ain't worth your life. Paddle, get safe, continue fishing after the thread is left. All right? So I'm going to go over these top 10 safety rules for kayak fishing real quick one more time. So number 1, don't drink, don't do drugs. Number 2, wear a PFD at all times while in the kayak and on the water. Number 3, file a float plan. Number 4, carry a radio or a fully charged phone for emergency use. Number 5 is learn to self-rescue. Number 6 is check weather conditions continuously, all the time when you're on the water, and just prior to launch. Number 7, have proper safety gear for the water and the kayak that you're in. For instance, a sit-in kayak is going to need a bilge pump, but a sit on top probably won't. Number 8, know your limitations and limits as a paddler. Number 9, know your limits of the kayak that you are in. Number 10, know how fast you can paddle on average and how far away your safe space is. So there it is. There are your top 10 safety rules for kayak fishing from me, Donald, right here at Floating Feathers Kayak Fly Fishing School. Please tune in every Tuesday at 2 o'clock Central for more tips and tricks. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, I believe it's going to be down here, go ahead and hit that for me if you would, and it will keep you up to date on all of my tips and tricks on kayaking, fly fishing, kayak fly fishing, and kayak fishing in general. So until next time, I appreciate every one of you watching. Y'all have safe paddles and tight lines.